Morning everyone. Well done on making it to the Easter holidays. I hope you've got some exciting plans that you can manage to do in your garden and house. So today's recommendation, so we're on recommendation number 2 today. And the book I'm going to be talking about today is one that I know I've recommended to members of 6KH. And it's one that I know Fatima read and she really enjoyed, and I recommended to Stella because I know she's a big Michael Morpurgo fan. Michael Morpurgo is obviously an amazing author. He used to be a primary school teacher as well. It's a fun fact about him. And he loves to write. Many of his books are set in rural settings which reflect where he lives. So that includes Born to Run that we read at the beginning of the year, and many of his other books. And Private Peaceful, which is the book I'm going to look at today, is no different. So a lot of the story is set in rural south of England, which is where Michael Morpurgo lives. And the rest of the story is set in the trenches of World War One. Again, this is a period of history that Michael Morpurgo really likes to write about. Quite a few of his books reflect this period of history, most notably War Horse, which is potentially one of his most famous books. And I don't know if you might have seen the film of that, and there's also a play. But for me, I really found this a powerful book. This was a book that when I was a child we listened to on audio actually. We listened to it on a really long car ride once. And I think we all really enjoyed it. So me and my brother and my mum and dad really liked it as well. So it appeals to all sorts of people. It's a very sad book. Not throughout the book, but by the end it's really sad. And I think Michael Morpurgo does a really good job of capturing just the horrendous events of World War One and the impact that had on families and communities, and just some of the terrible things that people had to experience and go through. But as I said, lots of that is intermixed with memories of the main character of his childhood. So our main character is called Thomas Peaceful, and he lives in a small village. He is not from a rich family. He's from a not very wealthy family who live in a very rural context. He has 2 brothers, so one brother called Charlie and one brother called Big Joe, who has some learning difficulties. So he's regarded as weird in the book by the community that he lives in, even though we realise what a kind person he is. And also Thomas's best friend Molly, who he meets on his first day at school. So the section that I'm going to read from the book to you today is not the beginning. This is from a chapter called Nearly 11:15. All of the chapters throughout the book are times, so 20 to 11, and they progress through the night as Thomas reflects back on his childhood as he's basically awaiting his death in the trenches. So that's why, in many ways, it's a really sad book, and it's also incredibly powerful. So this bit of the story, his father, I can't remember if he died or he left when the children were quite small. So his mother is struggling financially. She's struggling to look after all the children. And she's offered a job at the big house, which she initially refuses because she wouldn't be able to be there for her children. But eventually she's forced to accept this job and she goes to work there. And as a result, their grandma has to move into the house to help look after the children. And she's not a very nice grandma. She's not like a friendly, cuddly grandma. And yeah, you'll see you'll learn a little bit more about her. So the chapter starts with Thomas in the trenches. So he's probably in northern France somewhere, and then it flickers and flashes back into a memory of his childhood. There's a mouse in here with me. He's sitting there in the light of the lamp, looking up at me. He seems as surprised to see me as I am to see him. There he goes. I can hear him still, scurrying about somewhere under the hay rack. I think he's gone now. I hope he comes back. I miss him already. Oh, actually, it says scurrying about somewhere under the hay rack. I think they might be in a barn at this point. Again, in northern France, so advancing towards the front. I think Michael Morpurgo uses short sentences really effectively there to kind of make the reader pause and just think. There's tiny details that are mentioned. Grandma Wolf hated mice. She had a deep fear of them that she could not hide. So Charlie and I had lots to smile about in the autumn when the rain and the cold came, and the mice decided it was warmer inside and came to live with us in the cottage. Big Joe loved the mice. He'd even put out food for them. Grandma Wolf would shout at him for that and smack him. But Big Joe could never understand why he was being smacked, so he just went on, feeding the mice, just as he had before. Grandma Wolf put traps down, but Charlie and I would find them and spring them. All that autumn, she only ever managed to catch one. That mouse had the best funeral any mouse had ever had. Big Joe was chief mourner, and he cried enough for all of us. Molly, Charlie and I dug the grave, and when we'd laid him to rest, Molly piled the grave high with flowers and sang What a Friend We Have in Jesus. We did all this at the bottom of the orchard, hidden behind the apple trees, where Grandma Wolf could not see or hear us. Afterwards, we sat in a circle round the grave and had a funeral feast of blackberries. Big Joe stopped crying to eat the blackberries, and then, with blackened mouths, we all sang Oranges and Lemons over the mouse's grave. This nursery rhyme, Oranges and Lemons, Big Joe uses to kind of comfort himself throughout the book, and because of this, the family often sing it together, and it becomes a recurring theme, so it comes in and out throughout the book. Grandma Wolf tried everything to get rid of the mice. She put poison down under the sink in the larder. We swept it up. She asked Bob James, the wart charmer from the village with the crooked nose, to come and charm the mice away. He tried, but it didn't work. So, in the end, in desperation, she had to resort to chasing them out of the house with a broom. But they just kept coming back in again. All this made her nastier than ever towards us. But for Charlie and me, just to see her frightened, silly and screeching like a witch was worth every smack she gave us. In bed at night, our Grandma Wolf story was changing every time we told it. Now the Colonel and Grandma Wolf didn't have human children at all. Instead, she gave birth to giant mice children, all of them with great long tails and twitchy whiskers. But after what she did next, we decided that even the horrible fate was too good for her. Although Grandma Wolf did smack Molly from time to time, it soon became obvious that she liked her a great deal more than the rest of us. There were good reasons for this. Girls were nice. Grandma Wolf would often tell us, not coarse and vulgar like boys. Besides, she was good friends with Molly's mother and father. They lived, as we did, in a cottage on the Colonel's estate. Molly's father was groom up at the big house. They were proper people, Grandma Wolf told us. Good, God-fearing people who had brought their child up well, which meant strictly. And from what Molly told us, they were strict too. She was forever being sent to her room or strapped by her father for the least little thing. She was an only child of older parents and, as Molly often said, they wanted her to be perfect. Anyway, it was a good thing for us that Grandma approved of her family, because otherwise I'm sure she would have forbidden Molly to come and see us. As it was, Grandma Wolf said that Molly was a good influence and that she could teach us some manners and make us a little less coarse and vulgar. So, thank goodness, Molly kept coming home with us for tea every day after school. Not long after the mouse's funeral, it was Big Joe's birthday. Charlie and I had got him some humbugs from Mrs. Bright's shop in the village, which he always loved. And Molly brought him a present in a little brown box with air holes in it and elastic bands around it. While we were in school, she kept it hidden in the shrubs at the bottom of the schoolyard. It was only because we pestered her that she showed us what it was as we were walking home. It was a harvest mouse. The sweetest little mouse I ever saw, with oversized ears and big bewildered eyes. She stroked him with the back of her finger and he sat up for her in the box and twitched his whiskers at us. She gave him to Big Joe after tea, down in the orchard, out of sight of the cottage and well hidden from Grandma Wolf's ever-watchful gaze. Big Joe hugged Molly as if he'd never let her go. He kept the birthday mouse in his own box and hid him away in a drawer in the bedroom cupboard. He said it would be too cold for him outside in the woodshed with all his other creatures. But the mouse became his instant favourite. All of us tried to make Big Joe understand that he mustn't ever tell Grandma Wolf that if she ever knew, she would take the mouse away and kill it. I still don't know how she found out. But when we came home from school a few days later, Big Joe was sitting on the floor of his room, sobbing his heart out. his drawer empty beside him. Grandma Wolf came storming in, saying she wasn't going to have any nasty, dirty animals in her house. Worse still, so that he'd never bring any of his other animals into the house, she got rid of them all. The slow worm, the 2 lizards, the hedgehog. Big Joe's family of animals was gone, and he was heartbroken. Molly screamed at her that she was a cruel, cruel woman, and she'd go to hell when she was dead, and then she ran off home in tears. That night, Charlie and I made up a story about how we'd put rat poison in Grandma Wolf's tea the next day and kill her. We did get rid of her in the end too, but thankfully without the use of rat poison. Instead, a miracle happened. A wonderful miracle. Anyway, if you want to read it, you're going to have to get a copy. I don't know if you noticed, but last time I put an Audible link at the bottom of the page. So Audible, which is audiobooks on Amazon, are giving away free listening for children at the moment while schools are closed. So I'd really encourage you to get on there and sign up. It's really good just to hear stories, and there are some amazing narrators that narrate audiobooks. Thanks so much for listening. I'll be recommending another book tomorrow, so tune in tomorrow for another book. Thank you. Have a good day, guys.